A huge warm welcome to Art Gallery Explorer, the vlog that explores the London art scene with me, George Dopamine. Coming up, so, is this a gruesome 1 star out of 5 horror show, as the Times implied? A huge welcome from Tate Britain and a rainy London art lovers, where I'm still hoping that the Turner Prize is going to raise my spirits and yours today. This is still a really big artistic event. It's its 40th anniversary this year, and I'm going to take you inside, have a look at each artist one by one that's been nominated this year, shortlisted this year, before heading back to Dopamine Heights and sharing my thoughts about who I think is the deserved winner of the £25,000 first prize. I would love it, as always, if you could share in the comments what you think. That would be amazing, about both who you think the best artist was and also what you think about the quality of the work this year, because it's fair to say it's the 40th anniversary of the Turner Prize and it's had a bit of a beating in recent years as not reflecting the best of British art. I thought last year in the Towner it was an average selection at best, with 1.5 honourable exceptions. Anyway, let's head inside Tate Britain, here on the South Bank, here on the North Bank I should say, and explore the art. Pio Abad's work, To Those Sitting in Darkness, recreates an exhibition at the Ashmolean Museum, where the artist was invited to respond to the Ashmoleans' own collections. And the first piece of work does exactly that. It's a drawing based on Powhatan's mantle. This was a deerhide robe supposedly given as a gift to King James I by the leader of the Powhatan paramount chieftain. And it marks a really important contact between Native American people and the British settler colonists. The work that Abad produces is reimagined as a map. It's the mantle's underside, and he says the cracks become bleeding borders and its harsh creases transforming into flowing tributaries. It's not a map of any specific place, but an atlas for the many stolen lands that can never be recovered. Abad was born in the Philippines, and Kiss the Hand You Cannot Bite looks back at the tumultuous and bitter rule of Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos, who finally left the Philippines in February 1986 after stealing billions in an epic reign of corruption. This piece recreates one of Imelda Marcos's pieces of jewelry in concrete, blowing it up to fantastical size. My favourite series is this series of highly detailed screen prints that contain both personal and geohistorical and political resonances. In February 1897, the British sent soldiers to Benin on an expedition which was punitive in nature, an act of retaliation to the killings of a small British delegation to the kingdom a month earlier. During this infamous expedition, many were killed and the Benin bronzes were pillaged and brought back to London. Abad, during research in the pandemic lockdown of January 2021, realised that his flat, being located in what used to be the grand stores of the Royal Arsenal in Woolwich, now converted, was actually a place where this expedition began, where the troops would rally before being sent out to Benin. And so this work combines highly detailed pictures of the Benin bronzes with articles from his flat. This combination of the everyday and the stunningly, world-shatteringly beautiful and important is a really important juxtaposition, which makes us think afresh about Britain's colonial history. Especially when you see this eyewitness account by George Leclerc Egerton of a blood-stained altar in Benin, dashed off like an insignificant sketch. Abad's work, Giolo's Lament, is based on this etching, and when Abad read an account of Giolo's life, it inspired the work you're about to see. This passage struck the artist particularly. This Indian prince was taken prisoner of war by an English man of war, As he and his mother were going out upon the sea in a pleasure boat, his mother died on shipboard, of which the prince, her son, showed abundance of concern and sorrow. Work you've seen follows Giuliano's tattooed hand through engravings on the walls like a musical score. One of the most dropping facts of the whole exhibition is the one that in 1998 a Filipino curator put together an inventory of Philippine artifacts exiled in museums outside the country, and she discovered that 90% of Philippine material heritage exists in the back rooms of Western museums, and the most recurrent artifact is a bladed weapon from Mindanao, like you can see here, where indigenous tribes adopted Islam. And the artist places these bladed weapons on contemporary fabrics from Mindanao, creating a really interesting juxtaposition between what's been taken and what's coming from the place now. The first thing you notice in Jasleen Kaur's installation Altar Altar is this fake Axminster carpet which stretches out, and it's apparently meant to symbolize labour, assimilation, and class. And then we look up to see this, which is meant to be the sky suspended above you, the expansive sky, which Jasleen Kaur remembers from Pollock Shields. And she mentioned in an interview actually that this is meant to be in tribute to her mum, who would go to a local park and lie down on the ground and look up to the sky. There's a real tension between the devotional, these hands are chiming rhythms, and also the everyday, the objects that you see through the sky looking up. And also these chimes could be both seen as devotional but also as clocking on. You can just see over there the iconic image of the show, which is a Ford Escort covered in a doily. Sometimes this blares music, as you can hear here. There's a strongly autobiographical element to this show. These family photos tussle with images of identity. The exhibition says they refer to both identification and disidentifications, and they're tinted in an Irn-Bru-esque orange. Whereas on the floor, I was intrigued by images of protests, many from Scotland and restitution, which are described by Kaur, according to the exhibition, as counter images aimed to dispel the myths around where solidarities lie. And music totally resonates the space, coming from a variety of sources, as you've hopefully heard in this installation. The artist who transforms the space of Tate Britain the most is Delaine Le Bas. She has provided a layered installation which combines paintings, collages, costumes, soundscapes, and performances. And the exhibition tells us that her work explores unpainting, her British Roma heritage and stories of her own life, as well as feminist mythologies and her stories. And as you can hopefully see, it's quite a disorientating space. She's used fabrics to create walls, corridors, and small spaces. And she's used a variety of different materials to create this world. And I think you can see in this piece the kind of idea of deliberately unpainting. And she's taking us apparently through a psychic landscape from chaos to reflection and ultimately transformation. You're seeing here the first stage, which is probably my favourite, and it feels very much like chaos. This second room, entitled Reflection, riffs on that word in encouraging us to reflect, but also literally reflecting off walls covered in foil, which you can see here. And according to the exhibition, Le Bas asked, how can you make art in chaos and when someone is dying? And she started making this work when her nan was ill and her family life was in chaos. So it's infused with memories, apparently, from this time. We see that in some of the deliberately domestic touches, I think, like you can see here, and also in the model of a horse stuffed with clay, which is modelled on her own grandfather's black china horse. The red boots, which you can see here, are in large replicas of her first shoes, and the horse and the original baby shoes were permanently on display in her nan's glass cabinet. The final room, entitled Ascension, is meant to be where we experience a transformation, and we follow these red footprints down a corridor created by fabric, and this is what she's done throughout the installation. And then we come into a space which is much lighter, and which is centered on a shrine that has the ancient Greek priestess Pythia in the center of it, as you can see here. And Pythia guarded the oracle at Delphi, and apparently we're being encouraged to confront and reflect. And the command that you just saw there, know thyself, echoes out as the last thing you see from the work and from the installation. Claudette Johnson is probably the most well-known of the 4 nominees for the 2024 Paterno Prize. She's been producing art since the 1980s and was part of the Black Arts movement. And this exhibition does contain a handful of preparatory works, smaller works like these sketches, which you can see here. But the vast majority of paintings are her large-scale works, which are both intimate and epic at the same time. She manages to combine both feelings when looking at them. And it's really important to remember as well that these works do not necessarily, are not like a sitter sitting down. They don't represent individual people, but they're part of a much bigger story, lifted out of their original context and repositioned. Johnson decontextualizes her sitters according to the exhibition, and she thinks of this as a way to signal that black people have existed in the past, exist now, and will exist in the future, that we belong to all times. Traditionally, she's worked with the female figure, but in recent years, inspired by her relationship with her sons, she's turned her attention to portrayal of young black men. And her work is often about valorization of bringing black figures into art galleries where they've often been conspicuous by their absence in this quite traditional form of art. And the last thing I'd say about her work is that it often extends beyond the edges of the paper. And Claudette Johnson says, I find it quite exciting formally to think about the boundaries that the figure sits within, how they might escape those boundaries. And in her drawings, the exhibition says the balance between space, delicate line, and areas that are more densely worked create a sense of the figure as a living presence. And I certainly felt that in these works. And the show ends aptly with a self-portrait of this artist whose work I'm sure will last for a very long time. So, is this a gruesome 1 star out of 5 horror show, as the Times implied? No, in my opinion, it's not. And I thought that there was some good aspects of all 4 works and some things which didn't work as well. So if I was giving it a mark out of 5, like newspapers tend to and professional art critics, then it'd probably be a 2.5 or a 3 for me. I thought in terms of Pio Abad's work, I was particularly moved by the work which engaged with the 1897 Benin atrocity. I thought that was really powerful and a nice concept as well. With Jasleen Kaur, I love the exploration between and the tensions that you pick up between different identities as a Scottish Sikh growing up in Pollokshields in Glasgow. And I quite like the atmosphere of the Rome, the way that the soundscape constantly changed from a drone to blaring plot music. I actually quite like that. It won't be for everybody. With Delaine Le Bas, I love the energy of the first room, chaos, the self-consciously bad art. Le Bas describes herself as having a gypsy, hippie, punk aesthetic, and you certainly pick that up in the first room, and that kind of first of the three installations really worked for me. Claudette Johnson is the artist I knew the most before going in and was a fan of her work. And so it was a pleasure to see these works again in a gallery, especially as I hadn't been to see the show at the Courtauld Gallery. So it was really nice to see those there. In terms of what didn't work, I thought that there was a bit of a disconnect in some of Pio Abad's work aesthetically. And I thought, for example, Giolo's Lament, which took up a lot of wall space, didn't aesthetically really add anything to the exhibition at all. It was an interesting concept and an interesting story, but this was one of the ones where the wall explanation was actually more interesting than the art, and that could be a criticism leveled at some of the works. Although I don't shy away from detailed wall explanations and conceptual art. I thought that with Jasleen Kaur's work, it was a very big space. I didn't know. I enjoyed the concept of the sky and her mum. This representing the sky that her mum used to look up to when she escaped from her domestic care duties to go to the park. But aesthetically, I'm not sure if it worked that well. And there were a couple of pictures on the floor of contemporary or contemporary-ish actions, political actions in Scotland, which I was unsure without explanation how they link with the more autobiographical elements of the work. And I do think I've seen so many cars in galleries across Britain and Europe over the years, including Sarah Lucas in these very galleries recently, that I think you have to do more than just put a car in a gallery and put a doily on the top for it to become art. I got the autobiographical element, I got the visual wow moment, but it didn't do much more than that for me. I thought in terms of Delaine Le Bas' work, you were meant to be going on a journey between chaos, reflection and transformation, and I would have only known that through reading the blurb on the wall. I didn't get that personally from going between the three rooms in the installation. I'm a sucker for installation art, but I thought there were a lot of references being thrown, and it was almost too much, and that journey didn't work. And with Claudette Johnson, I thought that the paintings, I enjoyed them. They're beautiful works of art. I totally get what she's trying to do. I thought they got a bit lost in this very big gallery space at Tate Britain. I imagine they were more suited to the intimacy of the upper rooms at the Courtauld, so I'm a bit gutted I didn't see them there. Overall, this is £14 to get in. The show's back in London. Sometimes the Turner Prize is free. It was free at Towner Gallery last year. And I suppose the question is, the London art scene is so rich this autumn and winter with competing shows that I'd only recommend it really if you have a real curiosity to see what the judges consider to be the highs of British art this year. Was it a high for me? No. Will I be back? No. Definitely not. So really have a think about that. And I do think that there are better shows, better value shows than this out there. And also, I would say that there's better contemporary British art out there than the selection this year. I should say, last of all, I know some people have claimed that the diverse choice this year has been diversity for diversity's sake. I disagree with that. I enjoyed the diverse voices coming from multiple different experiences, and you really feel that as you go from one artist to another. Thank you for watching anyway. If you do go along, let me know if you think I've been too harsh or too generous. In terms of a winner, I would go for Pio Abad or Claudette Johnson, but I don't think this year there's a red hot favourite. Last year I really wanted Barbara Walker to win. She didn't. I thought she was a deserved winner. Jesse Darling won, and he was my second choice. So we'll see this year, but do post in the comments who you think is a deserved winner of for the Turner Prize 2024. And I do think there's an interesting debate here. The prize does sort of feel at a crossroads, so we'll have to see where it goes from now on. But I do think it's important for bringing attention to the contemporary art scene in the UK. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe to Art Gallery Explorer for more reviews of shows across London, the southeast of England and beyond.